Greetings, my name is Mike Graen. Welcome to another edition of the podcast focusing on on-shelf availability, sponsored by the Walton Supply Chain Center at the University of Arkansas. Today we are excited to have Barbara Chase with us. Barbara is a longtime professional in the on-shelf availability area within the industry. She's currently Vice President of Global Sales for ReTech or SymphonyAI. We talked to her about leveraging computer vision in store to understand things like out of stocks or incorrect products or pricing discrepancies, etc. Let's join our conversation with Barbara. When you start looking at robots running around in stores and fixed cameras drop from the ceilings or people coming in and taking pictures, I can't get enough people to actually stock the shelves now. How am I going to get people to come and take pictures? And then I think about this word that just sounds expensive, artificial intelligence. I mean, it just sounds expensive, right? So how do you justify that? How do you do the business justification to say this is an investment that you need to move forward?
Well, what I can also say is we have a value assessment team that consults for free to help with those business justifications. So we actually have a quite detailed ROI, return on investment assessment. So it's based on annual revenues. It's based on the number of SKUs, categories, frequency of images, and then based on the numbers that we've proven with our customers. So for instance, hang on, I'm just gonna use my PowerPoint as a guide here, but I don't need to share this picture. Is we have proven up to 5% in increased sales.
Wow.
And which is huge. And this is how we look at it as well. So from that, it's kind of a domino effect where it's when you have an increased planogram compliance, and we've got a recorded up to 23% increase in that. Then that correlates to an increased on-shelf availability or OSA, and we've proven up to 11% of that. And then that domino effect is, in fact, your sales. So you can take a percentage, and it is accepted and embraced by retailers and consultants, a percentage of that. If you take like a 1% OSA, that will equate to a certain percentage in sales. And so, and again, there's lots to back that up. That's not just Barbara's idea. Right. And so I will say that is a key differentiator, and that's why too there's so many pilots going on, because people want to say, in my environment, in my categories or entire store, whatever, we have proven an increased OSA, or an increased planogram. We also, from an optimized labor. So too, if we can say, hey, now that we have these prioritized work lists, we don't have to have or if we're using shelf cameras or robots, we don't need the labor to be doing that regular, I'll just say regular, whether it's daily, twice a day, weekly, doesn't matter, but that regular walk of, as I mentioned earlier, shooting holes or gap scanning or whatever, that goes away. And then the people that are also going through checking prices, that goes away. So those are hard dollar revenue. Another.
Let me interrupt you real quick, because anytime you say reducing labor, people relate that to we're going to automate people and get rid of people. I've never seen a retailer yet get rid of people because of this. What they do is they give them more meaningful tasks than doing audits, which robots and things can do. Because there's always more work to be done in a retail store than you can possibly get at. So whenever you say reduce labor, just be clear for anybody listening to this, that doesn't mean get rid of people. It gives them more empowering and hopefully customer facing jobs, or helping, picking orders for customers and things like that, not just scanning a bunch of shelves.
Exactly. And I'm so glad you pointed that out. Is as I mentioned earlier, they may have 100 employees, but they really do need 500.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
so that's where, again, we want them on customer facing or making sure that they're restocking, because we
Yep.
don't, we're the brains, but we're not the arms and the hands. That's where we need that help. So it's definitely a collaboration
Yep.
between the two, and that's why there's so much excitement.
Yep.
Now, the other thing from a business case perspective is what we have that is unique is data monetization. So we have just stood up a shelf product data monetization service. So with SymphonyAI, and I think the excitement about us being acquired about 1.5 years ago is we've just got this army of people like the value assessment team for free to work through those business justifications. But also there's a monetization team already working with and has coaches working with retailers and CPGs for loyalty data. So now we are adding the shelf data. We say store intelligence because we do displays and bunkers and all that kind of stuff, but just to help decipher between what's typically known as data monetization and shelf product data monetization, it's worthwhile. So when you've got the top 10 or 11 CPGs that have 1,500, 1,000, 500 sales reps, these DSDs are just going to go do things on their own, But for a tier 2 and a tier 3, they don't have those sales forces. So they want to buy that data. And oh, by the way, even for the big guys, there might be certain areas, whether it's a niche from a geography or a demographic, that data is still worthwhile to them. And rather than having their own people or an auditor or broker, well, if I can just buy it like I do from other data providers, that's valuable and worthwhile to me. One, because as I showed that virtual visit, maybe I don't need to visit a store quite as often. And I, as a CPG, then can cut my travel expenses because now I am getting a regular picture, whether that's daily, weekly, bi-monthly, monthly, whatever that frequency is. And so that's very exciting. That is new top line revenue. And a couple of our pilots right now, you have to do a pilot first to get the data to be able to socialize it with the different CPGs. But then having that, it's launching those conversations. So the idea is not that our solution costs anything at all. The plan is that it is a revenue generator
for the retailer.
For the retailer. 100%.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Got it. Excellent. Wow. Phew. There's a lot of stuff you got going on. So your primary customer, I guess, is a couple things, right? Number one, it's the retailer that wants this intelligence, but then you have to obviously collaborate very closely with the data collection folks, whether it's the fixed camera folks or the robotic companies, et cetera. Because I would assume for systemically collecting that data, every single data, every single shelf, et cetera, capturing it with either a camera in the ceiling or fixed camera on the shelf or a robotic scan is probably the more preferred method, would you think? So who's your customer? Who is your customer, I guess, at the end of this?
Yeah, and I'll tell you the answer is all over the place, because I said retailers are unique. And here's what's interesting too, is do you get trucks every day? Because if you don't get trucks every day and there's not to action, it might not make sense to have a daily picture. It might make sense to have a weekly picture, or maybe if your trucks come 2 or 3 times a week, because when we're talking about supply chain, right, let's follow that through. And so the you don't want data for data's sake. You really need to understand the entire ecosystem, and then what's the sensibility in that, the entire store, because different categories have much different different velocities.
Absolutely.
And that's what's kind of fun fun is you can you can look at your stores and have that surgical approach in regard to as we said earlier, how you image capture then to be able to staff, to be able to act against that data, so that you are always keeping customer satisfaction at the forefront.
Yep. Oh, that's awesome. That's awesome. So I guess one of the questions that I'd like to ask you is, what question have I not asked you that I should have? That's one of my favorite questions at the end. We got about 10 minutes left here. I want to make sure I've asked you a lot of questions. It's been a conversation, which is really the way we wanted this to be. This is Matt's dream, to be able to have not a bunch of PowerPoints, but a conversation about real retail on-shelf availability challenges. Is there a question that I should have asked that I didn't?
I think it is, in fact, around, so yes.
Okay.
And I think it would be around define computer vision.
Okay.
Because there are many solutions out there, and they say computer vision and AI, but they don't have the ability to, in fact, recognize that product. They do a great job at recognizing, hey, there's a hole here. Could be because of a misplaced item, but hey, there is a hole there, and that's good. That's goodness, but you can do better by understanding what that product is and where, better management and organization of the store, by having what we call true computer vision. It just adds to the use cases, because I think that's also the difference. A lot of times I say I feel like a grandma in this space, because I've been in it for 5+ years, and the speed at which it moves, that is a super long time. And just even, from 5 years ago compared to today, the ability of AI, or even just, we were in a retailer a couple of weeks ago, and the aisles were really narrow. Well, in 2020, which is relatively recently, they introduced negative zoom in regard to tablets and cameras. So before negative zoom, we wouldn't have been able to help that retailer, but now it's no problem.
No big deal.
And so with that, it's that understanding of how, as a retailer or CPG, if I am going to explore and potentially invest in this, I want to maximize the use cases, and the only way to do that is to have that combination of AI. That's good. Prioritize work lists, volumes of data, make sense of it. True computer vision. I not only recognize a whole, but I recognize the product, Honey Nut Cheerios to Cheerios and where it goes. And optical character recognition, pricing, promotions. That's big. To your point, as you mentioned earlier, hey, I came in, it's Wednesday, and where is it? And then the other question, if I can say, too, maybe missed, is how do I get started?
Okay. Barbara, how do I get started?
Well, what myself and my team would recommend is a pilot. And what I say is we recommend a crawl, walk, run approach. And as fast as AI is happening, and with the kind of chaos that Chat GPT, my daughter showed me that there was a Snapchat and Chat GPT. That's what was on the top of my head just like a week ago. And I was like, what? So, now that's caused like a flurry of, okay, I understand now what that means to me personally. So now I want to understand that. Pilot, how does it apply to your specific brand and your specific, so that then it's it's not only a meet and greet, it's okay, let's really understand your operations, your staffing, what systems you have, and how then does that work together in the entire supply chain, because now this is the last piece, like I mentioned earlier, it's never previously been available before. So supply chain has just been blind. They've just been blind to the most important piece, me as a customer. mirror. What do I see, right? So now that that's there, then we can understand in a pilot, which takes about 3 months, that from start to finish, how this works, and then 2, how to make a defendable business justification for a rollout.
There's a word that you didn't say, and I was really happy about it. You ready for it? Oh,
Okay.
several words. POC, proof of concept. You didn't say that, and here's why I think you didn't say that. We don't need to prove that this works anymore. Somebody asked me to do a proof of concept with an RFID project the other day. We've been doing this for 40 years. We know it works. The only question is, can we set up the right parameters in a pilot to figure out, how do we make this work for you as a retailer? So thank you for not saying we'll do a POC. What you said was we'll do a pilot. And I think the crawl, walk, run analogy is a really good one in this kind of a space.
Yeah. And I think it just makes we're so confident, we don't have any hooks in it.
Yeah.
So if it doesn't work out for whatever reason, we just take our toys and go home. So there's just really no stress. It's all excitement. And then just to even be involved from an employee perspective, whether it's in the store or whether it's up the headquarters chain, oh my gosh, like everybody's like, oh, do I get this on my resume? Do I get this experience? And it should be that exciting because there is so much to glean and to learn. And how cool if your organization, supports this exploration to understand how to continue to be fiscally responsible to make your chain as profitable as it can be, starting with customer satisfaction. And so, we've had, it's, I don't sleep much at night because I start the day with London and Germany and France, and I end the day with Beijing and Japan and Australia. So it's an exciting time to be here. And I just would love the opportunity to talk to as many as possible so they can, I always say seeing is believing. So that we can create more believers.
Yeah. Oh, this is awesome. Well, let me summarize this because I had the good fortune of actually meeting and working with Sam Walton while he was still alive. And one of the things he said, and then this quote has been shared a lot of times, but customer is ultimately the boss. They can choose to hire us or fire us every day by choosing to spend their money with us or somewhere else. And number one factor I've heard of people walking away from a retailer is front end checkout experience takes too long, et cetera. The number 2 one is availability of product. Didn't find the product. I was coming to look for this, and after the 3rd time of it not being there, to heck with it. I'm leaving my basket. I'm going to the competitor. So, and I do believe it's a two systems solution for most retailers. It's computer vision that you've been talking about. And I think for things like apparel and general merchandise and other stuff, you can run a camera by a bunch of clothes, but I can't tell one from another. I think RFID plays a role there as well. So there's a two technology race to figure out how to leverage this stuff. And I think you guys are well positioned to do this. Barbara, thank you so much for taking the time out of your busy schedule. We really do appreciate it. We will be broadcasting this on both Conversations on Retail and the Walton Supply Chain Center in the next couple of days. So thank you very much for your time. Any closing comments that you'd like to make before I close out the podcast?
I just wanted to say thank you so much to you, Mike. I think this is such an exciting podcast that you have, and it's so relevant and timely with all these technologies that are available. And it's so great that you are taking the lead to give us another avenue or venue to continue to educate.
Yep, absolutely.
Thank you.
Barbara, have a great weekend. Audience, thank you very much. We'll check back with you next time when we'll bring another Conversations on Retail on shelf availability. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Well, I hope you enjoyed that conversation with Barbara Chase. Join us next time as we have another industry professional talking about the capability, process, people, and technology to drive on-shelf availability at retail. Have a great day.